Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel for part 3 of my 10 unpopular rock and metal opinions. That's right, it's a trilogy now, and if you guys want to check out part 1 and 2, I'll leave the links down in the comments section below. I'd love to do more of these as well, because clearly I have no shortage of unpopular rock and metal opinions. So, that said, let's get started. These 10 are in no particular order, but I like to start with one that I think is pretty harmless altogether, and that's that, in my opinion, I think the Unforgiven 2 is the best of the Unforgiven trilogy. Now, Unforgiven 2 comes off of Reload from 1997, which admittedly is not my favorite Metallica album, although I don't think they have a bad record in their catalog. But, you know, the first Unforgiven, the original from the Black Album, is probably the most famous, has the best guitar solo out of the 3. And then, of course, Unforgiven 3 from Death Magnetic is probably the heaviest song of the 3 as well. But look at Unforgiven 2. I just think the lyrics are amazing. You know, I really love James' vocal delivery here as well. And also the callbacks to the original Unforgiven is fantastic here. Just, in my opinion, the best of the 3. And it's just a personal opinion, right? Everyone's gonna have a different favorite in the trilogy of the Unforgiven, but for me, I find Unforgiven 2 to be wickedly underrated, and out of the 3 to be the best as far as I'm concerned. 1992's Revenge by Kiss is one of the most overrated albums in their catalog, in my opinion, and let me just say, if you like this album, or, you know, with any of these picks, if you disagree with me, that's totally cool. You know, more power to you, and if you're a fan of Revenge, that's awesome. You know, it definitely does have its moments with, you know, some standout tracks here that include Unholy, right, God Gave Rock and Roll to You Too, Domino, right, Heart of Chrome, Thou Shalt Not. So there are some good tracks on here, but I just find the rest of the record to be pretty uninteresting and full of filler as far as I'm concerned. It was definitely an album that the band had to make, you know, seeing that they've been doing the hair and glam metal thing throughout the 90s, throughout the 80s, but they really wasn't going to cut it in the early 90s anymore, so the band pursuing a heavier direction here definitely made sense and was the right move. You can see the band here on the back, you know, changing up their look here as well, so, you know, that's pretty good, and I just think had the material been a bit stronger, it would be ranked a lot higher on my list in terms of some of the better Kiss albums in their catalog, but for me, I always know people have this ranked way too high on their lists, and I wouldn't consider it to be one of their best albums by a long shot. You know, it's just not great stuff here, in my opinion. Again, it has its moments, but I just found it to be a bit overrated by a lot of people when they, you know, count down their favorite Kiss albums. Ozzy Osbourne's 21st Century studio albums may sound all the same, but I wouldn't consider them bad by any means. As a matter of fact, I enjoy just about everything Ozzy has put out in the 21st century. You know, it's easy for a lot of people to write off those albums as being very much rinse and repeat, cookie cutter, generic albums, right? Ozzy not really taking any chances in the studio anymore these days. All those albums follow a very similar formula and sound, you know, very similar, right? Not too many distinguishable qualities between those albums. You could really, you know, designate one as being different from the other since, you know, in his 21st century catalog, but, you know, for me, I really enjoy them. I think they're a lot of fun. I think Black Rain is a great underrated album in his catalog, super heavy stuff here, and Ozzy sounds fantastic, right? Scream is pretty good as well, right? There's some fun tracks there. I really did enjoy Ordinary Man when it first came out in 2020. I think it's a great album, and then, of course, you have from 2022, as recently as last year, Patient Number 9, Ozzy's most recent studio album, so for me, I think we should just be grateful that Ozzy is still making music as, you know, as recently as 2022, and I find that to be a lot of fun, even though I realize we're far away from, you know, say, Diary of a Madman or Blizzard of Oz territory here. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Ozzy may follow a very similar formula for every record here, but I enjoy it nonetheless. Maybe the first truly polarizing opinion here on this video, I'm going to go ahead and say that Sixx:A.M. is better than anything that Motley Crue have done since, say, Dr. Feelgood. You know, people, you know, may have a varying of opinions on Motley Crue. For me personally, I really don't enjoy anything they've done post Dr. Feelgood. I wasn't a fan of Self-Titled with John Corabi. I definitely am not a fan of Generation Swine or Saints of Los Angeles, but when it comes to Sixx:A.M., the side project of Nikki Sixx, I really do enjoy that. I think they've made 5 studio albums, and I think that they're all really enjoyable, and for me, I just gravitate towards those records more than I would anything Motley Crue have done, you know, post-Dr. Feelgood, so albums like the Heroin Diary soundtrack, or This Is Gonna Hurt, Modern Vintage, I all find to be very strong, very enjoyable records, and again, I just gravitate towards them more than I would anything Motley Crue have done recently. You know, they're apparently working on another studio album with Bob Rock now, with, you know, Mick Mars no longer in the band. There's been a lot of drama, but they are in the studio, so it's going to be interesting to hear what they come out with in the future when they decide to drop that album whenever it's finished, but I don't necessarily have high expectations for it, and so for me, yeah, like I said, more of a fan of Sixx:A.M. than I am of anything Motley Crue have done in many, many years. I'm not really sure if this next one is an unpopular opinion, but as a CD collector, I absolutely hate this, so I do want to talk about it here. I absolutely cannot stand Digipaks, you know, the new way that they package CDs these days. I mean, look at the Digipack here. Here's just an example here. This is my copy of Pearl Jam's MTV Unplugged. Okay, so first problem is the way that this packaging is put together here. It's made of like cardboard, right? It's very flimsy, and when it first comes in the packaging, whether you order off of Amazon or you buy it in the store, it's wrapped up really tight in protective plastic, right? So this material is not meant to be wrapped up that tightly. So immediately when you take it out of the packaging, already here you have a compressed spine on your CD. That's not good. I don't like that. It does not look good, in your collection up on the shelf either. Speaking of the spine, very hard to read as well. The print is small, and it just attracts wear faster, I think, as you shuffle it around and you're on your shelf to move things over for new things when new CDs join your collection. So that's definitely a problem. And then if you want to go inside here, look at the inside. There's no there's no booklet anymore. All you have here is the CD inside of just another layer here of cardboard, which I now have to pull the CD out. And while doing so, look at where my finger is. It's right on the disc. So now this is very easy now to scratch or smudge the bottom of your CD, but that's the idea, then to take it out like that, and then if you want to put it back in, you have to slide it against the cardboard here just to put your CD back in. Your CD is going to get damaged very easily. Now, I just beg the question, what was wrong with jewel cases? Here's another Pearl Jam album here. Here's 10, their debut album. What was wrong with this kind of packaging for, CDs? Much more protective, didn't attract that much wear. Obviously, yeah, the plastic cracks from time to time, but you can very easily switch that out with another case, and the spine as well, much easier to read than, a Digipack here, right? What would you rather read and see in your CD collection? This or that? Personally, I'd much rather have a jewel case than a Digipack. I find the packaging to be very annoying. It attracts wear and can do damage to the CD itself. Audioslave, of course, the supergroup formed after the disbandment of Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine, respectively, they were a great band, I think. But I don't think that Chris Cornell performed the Rage Against the Machine tracks all that well live. Obviously the studio tracks that they recorded together were fantastic, right? Even, when they performed that stuff live, Chris Cornell was fantastic, an incredible singer, had a great range. But did you ever hear him sing any of the Rage Against the Machine songs live, like Killing in the Names? In my opinion, he just didn't pull it off the same way that Zach De La Rocha could, and just didn't sound right as far as I'm concerned. Now, I love Chris Cornell's voice. I think he's one of the best singers of the 90s, and did some great work with Audioslave as well. Some of his best vocals are on some of these Audioslave records, but live performing the Rage Against the Machine tracks just never did it for me, and I just always thought it sounded weird. Now, there are going to be some hardcore Chris Cornell fans who disagree with that, but for me, I just didn't think he did justice to the Rage Against the Machine songs live like Zach De La Rocha could, so for that reason I wanted to include it here on this list of unpopular opinions. Moving on now to Alice Cooper with his 1983 release DaDa. In my opinion, DaDa is the most underrated album in the Alice Cooper catalog. Recorded during his much maligned blackout period here, Alice had hit rock bottom due to his drugs and alcohol addiction and remembers nothing about this time period. There was no tour for this album, and Alice has never done anything live from this record. Also, this is the final record with Warner Records, and they did nothing to promote this album when it came out. So for that reason, it's one of the most underrated and overlooked albums in his catalog. And for me, I love just about every track on here. The menacing title track, DaDa, is fantastic, super atmospheric. You have Enough's Enough, Formerly Warmer, No Man's Land, Dyslexia, Scarlet and Shiva, I Love America is a lot of fun, right? You have some really witty, classic Alice Cooper lyrics there. Fresh Blood, and then Pass the Gun Around, which features one of my all-time favorite guitar solos by session guitarist Dick Wagner. Just David Gilmour-esque, in my opinion, was that solo. So good, and one of my favorite Alice Cooper songs, period, is Pass the Gun Around. And, obviously this was pretty much of a carry job here by Dick Wagner and Bob Ezrin, who produced the record. Alice had, like I said before, hit rock bottom and was in a very bad way here, but they were still able to pull a great album out of him here. I think his best since Flush the Fashion. So really solid stuff in DaDa from 1983, and like I said, in my opinion, the most underrated album in his catalog. Just a true hidden gem. Well, speaking of hidden gems, I think Loch Ness by Judas Priest off the Angel of Retribution album is one of metal's most overlooked epics. Is it a bit self-indulgent? I'd say so, right? It's a very long, drawn-out track here by Judas Priest on the reunion album with Rob Halford, Angel of Retribution, from 2005, but I just really love its progressive elements. The lyrics are really good as well, and Halford's vocal performance is fantastic. Just a great song, almost Iron Maiden-esque at times here, and one that just so many people tend to write off as just being way too long and unnecessarily long to close out the record, but for me, I think it's a really fun song, right? It's got some really strong moments as well, and, I consider it to be a great song in the Priest catalog, and definitely a very strong album album closer, even though a lot of people would tend to disagree with me. I think Loch Ness is super overlooked and overhated in terms of metal epics. There are a lot of really great, long, drawn-out songs in metal that people tend to gravitate towards more, but for me, I think this is a great epic here and an awesome album closer from Angel of Retribution that is just overhated by a lot of Priest fans. For me, I really enjoy it. Loch Ness, great underrated track from Angel of Retribution. Iron Maiden are my favorite band of all time, and for me, I love Iron Maiden live. I think they're the best live act in metal today, so this might come as a shock to some, but there are some overplayed Iron Maiden tracks in their live set that I personally don't ever need to hear live again. Tracks like Fear of the Dark, Run to the Hills, The Wicker Man, Blood Brothers as well, while being great songs, I've been just performed live to death, and I don't necessarily need to hear them in the Iron Maiden set anymore, and would much rather they replace them with, some deep cuts, things of that nature, and, also you have the two songs in the Blaze Bayley era in The Klansman and Sign of the Cross that they perform live pretty regularly since, I don't know, it's been in and out of the set list for years, but especially here on the Legacy of the Beast tour, it's been performed regularly, so now the Legacy of the Beast tour is over, I hope they, do add some more variety to the set list on the Future Past tour, and I think they will, but when it comes to the Blaze Bayley era tracks, I hope they, incorporate something else from that era, and maybe go with a song like Blood on the World's Hands, instead of once again falling back on Sign of the Cross, so, for me, I enjoy those songs, but I just wish Maiden would, mix it up a little bit, and don't necessarily always need to fall back on those songs live, because I've heard them live to death, and really never need to hear them live again. Last one here, and probably the most controversial opinion, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think Metallica and Lars Ulrich in particular were right for going after Napster the way that they did in the early 2000s. Napster was, allowing fans to, take illegally downloaded files, share them around, and essentially taking money out of the pockets of these bands. And it doesn't matter how much these musicians are worth. They should be compensated for their music. So, in my opinion, Metallica were totally in the right to be annoyed by this, and Lars in particular became the poster child for, anti-Napster at the time, but he wasn't the only musician who had a problem with this, so, for me, in my opinion, the way that they went about it in execution probably could have been a lot better, but as far as Metallica taking a stand against illegal file sharing, they were totally in the right, and probably, definitely ahead of the times in a sense that they saw where the music industry was going and how it was all going to be digital over time, and now we have Spotify and, Apple Music, but things are being done, with the consent of these bands, and they're being monetized for it, but back then, just illegal file sharing, downloading songs before they were released, leaks, things like that, just all that stuff was, not in the right, and so I think that Lars and the band were, totally within their rights to go after it. So when it comes to the Napster debacle, it was a big debacle on every front for just about everybody involved, but definitely gave Metallica a lot of bad publicity and alienated a lot of their fans at the time, but in terms of the growing internet at that time as well, I think the band were right to take a stand, and I think it's pretty commendable that Lars Ulrich was able to, stand up for the band and their back catalog, as well as, music they'd be releasing in the future, and ensure that Metallica were not being, leaked, they were not having, some of their music and their files being downloaded illegally, things of that nature. So, in my opinion, Lars and Metallica were right for the way that they went after Napster, despite the fact that it got them a ton of, bad publicity at the time. So that wraps up this list here of 10 more unpopular rock and metal opinions, part 3, which should be visible right over here. If you enjoyed this video or if you agree with me, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comments below what are some of your unpopular rock and metal opinions. I'd love to hear them, so let me know all that good stuff down in the comments, and until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.